Hello again. It wouldn't surprise you that I've done this video a few times, not just today, but over the last couple of years. Today's a little bit different. Today I'm going to show you for the very first time Panda 2.0. By the time you see this video, I would have announced and released the upgrade to Panda Flour. If you've followed us, and if you know anything about sort of Panda Flour, or if you've seen the previous videos on sort of what is Panda Flour, it's a combination of 3 ingredients. It's bamboo fibre, it's psyllium husk, and it's coconut flour. And for the last 2 and a bit, 3 years, I've been working with a particular psyllium husk, which is the whole husks. They're blonde. So they, in the original Panda Flour, you'll see little pale flecks within the flour, because the other two are pretty much, they're pure whites. The bamboo and the coconut are essentially pure white. So the psyllium has always been visible, but only just visible. So if you've ever made pastry, if you've ever made plain wraps, then you can see these little sort of specks in there. I'll let you into a secret. About a year ago, I got sent a sample of a new psyllium husk, which is the blonde version, i.e. the husk, but as a fine powder. And I was sent it because they knew, the suppliers knew that I obviously use it as a primary ingredient, and they asked me to test it out. The issue was, it wasn't available until 2025. So I tested it. It was fantastic, but I had to then just forget about it because it wasn't available up until about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I got a message saying we're expecting the shipment coming in. So we've started to plan to move from Panda 1 to Panda 2. I've done some experimenting with it. I remember at the time when I used it, I was like, the wraps are bright white rather than this pale beige, I don't know what, pinkish colour from the psyllium. So I was quite excited when they sort of said, right, we can get it, it's in the country, or it's coming into the country. When do you want it? I was like, I want it as soon as possible, please. So I'm going to remake, because it was only last week I actually made this video and I've not bothered to release it because things have changed. Remake the wraps using the new Panda Flour. Unless you study it, you won't see, you may not notice the significant difference. To anyone that has used it on a regular basis, and you sort of have a quick look at the flour, it's pure white. So it looks like flour. So not to be confused with flour that's in a supermarket. This is obviously unique flour, but it looks like what you would typically assume to be flour if you bought it from a supermarket. I'll use 100 grams. I'm just gonna get this in here, and then I'm going to show it to that camera there. Because it's pure white. There's not a fleck of anything in there. The ingredients are exactly the same. The coconut flour, the bamboo, the psyllium husk. So the quantities, the values, so the macro values, all the same. All exactly the same. It's just a different grade of psyllium. That's all it is. So it's just much finer. It's still the blonde version. There is you may find, and I know people have had issues with buying different versions of psyllium when they sort of first go looking for psyllium. There's a greyish version out there. It's quite a rough. Oh no, I need the scales there for the water. It's quite a rough psyllium, which. I'll be 100% honest, I don't understand why there's such a difference in the quality of them. But the rough stuff seems to turn things funny colours. So this is the pure white stuff. So into the, and this is when I explained about Panda Flour. To make the wraps, it just is flour, a little bit of salt if you want it, and water. 400 grams of water. You can go anything between 350 and 400 grams of water. Let me just do this so I don't. Overpour. There we go. 400 grams. To my mind, the new Panda Flour is a fraction more absorbent. So as I test recipes now, and I know how they are supposed to feel, and I know how they're supposed to look, I mean, we may be talking a 1 to 2% increase in absorbency. So on a general basis, the recipes don't require any form of readjustment at all. What I have found, and when I made the wraps recently, when they sent me another sample to say, you know, here it is again, and would you like to try it? And are you still interested? And I made these wraps, and I was like, wow, it feels like it holds better. Now, if I was to put the two videos side by side, the ones that I did less than a week ago and this one, and doing this bit, this has come together much easier than the last one. The last one took more work for it to absorb the liquid. It's not ready yet. I mean, I'm not ready to roll it out yet, but the consistency of the dough is smoother, and it probably won't come across on this camera, but I'll try and sort of show it to this camera. It's smoother. It feels firmer already. So it's taken on, obviously, because the psyllium is now a powder and rather than the whole husk. It seems to increase the absorbency. And it's the psyllium that gives it the stretch. You know, it's the psyllium in the blend is essentially there to try and give us a glutinous effect. You know, when we're moving away from using a gluten-based flour, or even, you know, if you somebody messaged me recently about could I make something with an alternative gluten-free, a branded gluten-free flour, and I'm like, no, because it's 80 grams of carbs per 100, which means this same recipe, even if it didn't require any other alterations, which it would, so that would use more flour, but even if it didn't, if I only used 100 grams of that flour in comparison to 100 grams of Panda Flour, this dough ball would now contain 80 grams of carbs. Whereas, as it does now with Panda Flour, it contains 9 grams of carbs. It's an enormous difference, enormous. Anyway, that has absorbed the liquid. There's nothing coming out of it at all. My hand is dry coming off the dough. It is definitely got more of a stretch to it. I am still going to let that rest for 10 minutes, okay? I'm not gonna rush the process. I'm gonna still let that rest for 10 minutes. And then we're gonna come and divide it. We'll make it into 5 dough balls. We'll roll it out and I'll show you exactly what I did last time. I might actually release both videos so you can see the difference. You know, I did the original video using the Panda Panda version 1. We had the wraps over the last couple of days. You know, they've eaten. They're exactly what we've been used to for the last 2-3 years. This is just a little bit different. So I'll be back in 10 minutes. Okay, I'm back. Time enough to make sure the dogs are behaving and make a cup of tea. Okay, so I'm going to weigh this out. It doesn't feel much different than it did sort of 10 minutes ago, but you can sort of see it's definitely there's more of a stretch there. There's more of a bind, which is, again, what struck me when I very first used it. So let's weigh it out. So I've got about 500 grams here, so we can go with 100 gram. Yeah, so we can go with 100 gram dough balls. So we can get 5, and this will, because it will stretch a little bit more, we can make them a little bit bigger. You can make smaller ones. That's a pure fluke that I've just done 2 exact 100s. 95. You know, you could turn these into whatever size you want. The carb values haven't changed. So this entire batch of dough is 9 grams of carbs. So dividing it by these 5, then we're looking at, well, less than 2. You know, I think it's what, 1.7, something like that. But less than 2 per. Yeah. 101. That evens it out. Right, okay. Okay, so a couple of ways that you can roll this dough out. In the book, I'm sure it says using parchment paper. So I'll do that for the first one. So you don't need any extra flour. You do need a couple of sheets of parchment paper. These are, so if I just, well, I can use my trusty little, that's 9 inch. So that's about, yeah, it's a 9 inches wide, and I think that's then a 12 inches long. So that's a 12 by 9 piece of paper. So I'm easily going to get the wrap to sort of touch sort of either side. So 9-inch wrap, probably get it bigger. But this is a way that you can, if you've not done much rolling out previously and you're not comfortable with it, then start between 2 sheets of parchment. Reason being, if it doesn't work, you don't get the shape that you want, you can bring the whole dough back together and start again. So always roll away and towards yourself, to and from. It doesn't need much pressure, it's very light. Don't worry that the dough is a little bit uneven when you're rolling out to start with. It will begin. Obviously the parchment paper helps to do the rotation. You don't just need to do the 90 degree, you can sort of do a 45 degree and roll out. Now bear in mind that it's going to be impossible to roll a perfect circle. You can always cut the dough, so using a plate or a bowl or something, you can always cut the perfect circle. But wraps don't need to be perfect circles to be enjoyed. And you'll see that as the dough spreads out, and it just becomes a little bit easier, a little bit more even. So the pressure you'll find will be more evenly distributed. So we're getting there. Just gonna roll it that way. So before I carry on, and we can see the size, so we've got sort of like about an 8-inch square there almost. I'm going to take both sheets of paper away. So 1, and 2. Then we're going to carry on. Going to carry on rolling out. The paper does restrict the roll a little bit. So as much as it is easier, because you can gather the dough back up, once you get to a certain point, the paper is going to actually restrict how much you can roll the dough out. Whoops. Again, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to paper off. Paper off. And we'll just do that once more. Okay. So we're right at the edges of the paper, so we know we're a good 9 inches wide, and it's about the same. It's a little bit misshapen, but that's absolutely fine. Now, if you wanted, just get rid of this. If you wanted to cut that down to get the perfect circle, let me get a plate. Almost. I'm just a little bit short on that piece there. Yeah, it's better. Okay. So this is obviously not necessary, but it's just if you wanted to have nice, neat wraps as best we can. Those bits just get mixed into another dough ball. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to set that to the side. So that's one way of doing it with parchment, which will prevent any waste, because if it's not right, you're not happy with it, just bring it back together and roll out the dough, because we've not added anything to it. So number 2, this is my preferred way of doing it, which is obviously with a little bit more flour on the surface. Okay. So we just need a little dusting. Roll your dough ball in it. Flatten out a little bit. Let's just get rid of these bits. And again, it's no different. It's a backwards and forwards. But this time, after we've done a few backwards and forwards rolls, is flip it and rotate it. So 90 degrees. So we're going to lift, we're going to turn it over, and we're going to rotate it 90 degrees. And again, now it's when you're doing this that you can really see the difference in the pull, so the stretch. And the fact that it's pure white. I mean, this wrap has got zero colour into it at all. It's a, you know, it just looks like it's just self-raising flour and water. That's it. But you can see how, I wouldn't say easier, but it's a little bit smoother in getting the dough to stretch without the paper. So the paper, as much as it will allow you to make mistakes and go back and do it again so you don't waste it, it does inhibit a little bit of the stretch, because it obviously grips to the paper. Whereas this, there you go. So just little bits of flour. It doesn't need much. It's just a little dusting, and you can sort of see that it's not too fragile that I can't, I'm not being ultra careful when I pick it up and rotate it. It is fairly robust. This is what I mean about sort of like the strength. It seems to have a little bit more strength. I mean, watch. I'm not going to cut any of this out. I can guarantee one of them's going to tear. Yeah. So I'm going to cut nothing out of this rolling process. There's a challenge. But once I roll this round now, so if I get this on my, so I'm over the 9-inch line, pretty much all the way around. See what I mean? It's just stuck to the pin there. Not enough. I'll be able to rescue that. I need to touch more flour up that end. It just stuck. So as we roll it out, obviously you're exposing more of the dough, so therefore more of the moisture. So that's fine. Repaired that. Let's get some flour underneath it. So we're almost at the 10-inch wrap size now. Yes, it will, when you cook it, it will shrink back down a little bit. But this isn't trying to tear when I'm now getting it to, you can sort of see, you know, it's almost translucent. I can almost see through this. But it, you know, and it's still strong enough that I can pick it up, the whole thing, turn it over. I'm still going. I'm going to try and push this as much as I can. Where are we? So I'm on the 10-inch. So there's the. I mean, I'm over the 10-inch because it's slightly misshapen. I'm over the 10-inch line in most places. There we go. I'll go one more roll on that side. Look at that. So if I was to put my now 9-inch plate sitting on top, you can sort of see I've got clearly a good 9-inch wrap there plus the extra. So if you wanted to trim that, you can trim that. This will re-roll, but I'm going to leave that one exactly as it is. I'm going to add it to my pile. Right, okay, I'm going to carry on rolling these. I will record all of them. So if anything weird and wonderful happens in the other three, then I'll be able to show you. If nothing weird and wonderful happens, then I will speed through them rather than make you watch 10 minutes of me just rolling dough. Unless I've got anything interesting to say, but you know. We'll see. Definitely leaving this one in the video because this is about as round as I'll ever get it without a cutter. This is the one that when you do the video edits and do the thumbnail picture, this is the one that appears in it. Although it'll also be the one that tears. No, there we go. Again, I mean, I'm not going to try and push them all out to 11 inches or whatever. You know, that is, again, 10-inch wrap, pretty much all the way around. In fact, it's the full width of the rolling pin. Gonna need to buy a bigger rolling pin. Well, there we go. Number 2. So I've got these little scraggly ends, I'll add them to these. I suppose the key to trying to keep it in a reasonable shape is to not try and go too heavy-handed. Don't try and push it out too quickly. You know, I can see it sort of looping there a little bit, so I'm just going to bring that in. So repair it as you sort of go through those early stages. Helps you create the shape. Because once you've got it to that, wherever we're at now, sort of like 6-7 inch size, it's not really going to change shape much more now. It's just going to stretch out. You pretty much know you're going to get a circle or a square early on. Once more around this way around. Again, that's easily pushed out over a 10-inch lines. All right, last one. There you go. I just remembered, I've not had the issue of the wrap sticking to the surface. However, if it does, you sort of like, you try and pick it up and it's a little bit stuck, then just use the pin to sort of help you guide it. So roll it towards you, just sort of like pick up the back edge and then using the rolling pin, just because if it's a little bit stuck, you'd be able to sort of then use your other hand to be able to lift it up, or you know, a knife, just to sort of like take it off the board, and then you can pick it up, dust the board again, lay it down. There we go. And that's it. That's the 5 wraps done. I will quickly rearrange what I've got here, and I'll go through 3 different ways we can get them cooked, ready to eat. So there you go, there's number 5. See you in a minute. Okay, so we're back. I've got ready a good non-stick frying pan. I've got my crepe, pancake pan, whatever you want to call it, and I've got the oven warmed up. These things are great, so the griddle pans are great. They'll cook a little bit slower than a standard frying pan, but because they are a completely non-stick surface, if you are having problems trying to sort of essentially lift and flip, then these may be a solution for you. However, the baked version is obviously how we would always have done them previously down at the bakery. Leave them on a piece of parchment. We're going to bake it for 8 minutes. There we go. And then that'll be good to go. What I should have said there as well is that make sure you've always taken it off the parchment first, so as in release the parchment from the paper and then sort of leave it on the parchment when you bake it. For these, it's straight on. So the reason why I prefer to roll the wraps out with a little bit of flour is it gives you that slightly different texture. So you can do it with the parchment without the flour, but with the flour it just gives there's just a very light coating of flour on the wrap, and that's exactly how there would be in a traditional tortilla wrap. Right, that's it. Medium heat. This is on sort of fairly high. In fact, it's almost on max. But this is on a medium heat, so this is on a 1300 out of 2000 watts. So it's on, on a scale of 1 to 9, it's on about a 6. Most of the cooking is going to happen on this first side. Okay, so there's no specific temperature that we're trying to get to here because it's just flour and water. But what we are obviously trying to do is get a nice texture. And to make sure that the whole thing is now going to become more stable. So I'm just going to go and get a spatula to turn these over. I can already see, and this is better, when I did them last week, I didn't quite have this on hot enough, so they took quite a long time. But when we get a spatula, and we'll turn them over in a second. So you will see that it starts to dry out. So they puff up just a tiny amount, just a tiny amount. That's just the moisture. Let's have a look at this one. It's getting there. It's not ready to go yet. You can still see it's quite doughy underneath. Probably 2 to 3 minutes this first bake, and then on the opposite side it's just sort of 30 seconds to a minute to finish off. I'll put that there so we can see that. Yep. Yeah, I can see it's drying out here quite nicely. So let's flip that one over. So these don't tend to colour. These griddle pans don't tend to colour the wraps at all. Whereas these will get a slightly more golden. Just trying to get a corner. See if it's started. A little bit more. You tend to worry that they're going to burn before they're even cooked. Well, let's have a look. Okay. Don't forget these were easily 10-inch wraps. There we go. So you get that. I mean, that's been on there for. We can have a look at the camera and see how long it's been on. Maybe 2 minutes. I don't know. And it's only just started to sort of get that slightly charred look. And you can sort of see now that they've pulled in, they've shrunk in size just a little bit. There you go, see? That's it. So most of the cooking happened on side 1, quick sort of flip over onto side 2, and that's that done. That's that one. Perfect. Let's have a look. Again, it is done, but it is barely coloured. It's got a little bit of colour in one section. There's very little in the way of colouring there, but again, it's fully done. I'll do one in each again. I've actually made them bigger than the pan, so they're sort of resting up the side of the pan. There you go. You can see there, that's all the way up the edges, all around the pan. And then this was the one that we did without flour. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just make sure I can get it off the paper because it's been sat there for a few minutes. So I'm just going to rotate that, take the paper off. Otherwise the paper will stick to it when we put it, try and take it on the heat. There you go. So again, it's a little stickier than these because of the flour. These, reuse them again. That's actually, I used them for the first video. So that's their second full use. And we're only 2 minutes away from that, so with any luck we'll be able to use this entire, it would be 8 minutes long video to show you. So that's all 5 cooked in those 8 minutes. Yeah, I'm going to let that one, when I've rolled that out on the paper, that's definitely not as thin or as big, so I want to make sure that's fully cooked before I tip that over. Yep. Yeah, it's still soft in the middle. See if I can turn it. Whoops. Almost caused it to stick to itself. Okay. Yep. Again, you can, I don't know if you can see, but we'll certainly be able to see on this one. It sort of puffs up in the middle a little bit. And there we go. So look at that. Perfect. So I'll turn that one off. We'll wait for this. We've got 1 minute left on that. This one's going to take at least another minute. You can absolutely see the difference in the way they cook. So these, when they're baked, they can be quite rigid when they first come out. They can be quite firm, but as they cool, they will soften. And you could do a batch of each, put them together, and you would never then be able to work out really from the way they feel. You'd never be able to work out the difference. However, again, these won't brown. So if you like this this texture, where you get the slightly charred texture, then the pan frying is the way to go. There you go. That's completely, I mean, it's baked, it's fully baked. 8 minutes in there is more than enough. It feels dry on top, which is different to these. Feels dry, it won't puff up at all. I can rest it on there. There you go. Now that will need to, obviously, that will soften a little bit. It won't feel anywhere near as dry once it's cooled down. Lay that on there, and then almost. It's just I left it a little thick in the middle. It's pretty much done. I'll put them there. And just do a quick, yeah, that's done. Okay. All right. So there was the rolled within parchment paper. So that's about a 7-inch wrap there. Then we got the ones that we rolled. So that was also cooked on there. So that one was also cooked on the griddle. So those two are cooked on the griddle. Then you got the two that we rolled in flour and then dry pan fried. Those have stayed a slightly bigger size. Again, I mean, they're still very mildly warm, but completely flexible. So you can see they don't tear. And then this one is the baked version, which again, they say it feels drier on this side. It's a little wetter on this side, just because that's the side that was in contact with the parchment. But again, as it's still flexible, but as it cools, it will become softer as well. So there'll be little difference between those two once they're cool in the way that they look and feel. That's it. There you go. There's the wraps. So that's the new Panda Flour, the 2.0, the one that is now available. To my mind, it allows a little bit more. It's a little bit more tolerant. I know that we've sort of got used to not having to make our own sort of food, so learning a skill of rolling out and you know, making these wraps from scratch is always going to be more difficult. And then you're trying to use something that doesn't have all of the gluten and all of the stretch, you know, that other flours have. So it's great that the change in the psyllium is actually allowing a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more tolerance, as I say. But anyway, let me know what you think. The flavouring wise, I think I talked about this last time, flavouring wise, obviously you can add anything you want to these wraps, any seasoning that you want in there. Any dry seasoning, add it to the flours and mix it in. If you've got a smoky barbecue sort of like liquid, you can always put a few drops into the water. We used to obviously do the cheese mite. So if you want to stir some Marmite or yeast extract into the water before it goes into the flour. So, you know, you can be quite creative with wraps. They don't have to be just this. Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot. I will see you in the next video.